Hospitality. How many think they have the gift of hospitality? Have you ever heard that as a gift? That's what we're going to kind of talk about today. But maybe you've heard this very humorous story more importantly. It's all about the pastor who was having difficulty with his assigned parking space at the church parking lot. We don't have that problem, do we? We don't have a parking lot. Well, people parked wherever they wanted to, and they parked in his spot whenever they pleased. And so even though there had been a sign that was there that said, "This space reserved," he thought that the sign needed to be just a little bit more clear. So he had a different sign made that said, "Reserved for pastor only." Still, people in the church just ignored it. They didn't park and they didn't care that it said that, and they just parked wherever they wanted to. So the pastor was thinking about it even more, and he thought to himself, maybe it needs to even be a little bit more forceful. So he thought, and he finally devised a very intimidating one that said this: "Thou shalt not park here." Not one of the 10 Commandments, but he evidently felt like it needed the thou. Well, it still didn't make any difference. And so finally, he hit upon the words that worked the best. The sign said, the one who parks here preaches the sermon on Sunday morning. That would get, I think, a lot of people not parking in the pastor's spot, right? Yeah, that's exactly right. I guess I tell you this story because most of you probably would hedge at the thought of that being your gift of ministry, right? Preaching the sermon on a Sunday morning. Heck, sometimes I think it's hard to just get somebody to stand up and pray at a meeting. They always look to me and say, "Pastor, would you pray, please? Would you pray at dinner for us, Linda?" Sure, I can pray. Anybody can pray, but it's hard. We probably feel uncomfortable doing it. They think that they have a lack of experience or training. But if you don't have the gift of preaching or visiting or any of the other kind of gifts that I have as pastor, then again, I ask you, what gift of ministry do you have? Sharon has the gift of music and sharing of that ability along with Freddie and many others. We know that there are people in our church that are mechanically inclined. So we give, I don't know what gift of ministry that's called, but Ed, whatever you do is the magical ministry of taking care of the church, right? Along with a whole bunch of helpers. We all have an opportunity to have a varied variety of ministries in which every person in our church can share some of their gifts or talents, not just trained seminary people. And actually, I wish there had been a class in seminary that is called boiler keeping, air conditioning maintenance, and other things that fall under your category of other duties listed. Nobody teaches that class in seminary. These ministries, they are based on gifts, the ones that you all have. And so when people talk about church people being involved in things, we know that means it takes a whole entire village to take care of our church and building and all of our ministries. You know, Paul even made a list of the gift of ministries in one of his passages when he was talking about church people and being involved. He listed them as preaching and teaching, administering, caretaking, praying, and even arbitrating. Our gospel lesson here from Luke today also has those overtones of you have a gift of ministry, along with the Hebrews text. It all sets before us this kind of common idea that ministry is something we can all take part in. I guess, though, the one that I wish I had more opportunity to do, I love, though, the gift of hospitality, the ministry of hospitality. Now, we know that that term hospitality has kind of grown and changed over the years. And I'd say the biggest person, or two maybe biggest people that I would take claim for that is Martha Stewart But hers is more not the gift of hospitality, but the gift of entertaining, right? And who else would you think is somebody who has taught us about hospitality? Who? Yeah. Was that somebody that had those? Pearl Mesta. Does that sound familiar to some of you? Oh yeah, the ones in the back. I love it, right? The concept of hospitality is very biblical. There are readings that remind us that we are not to set ourselves above other people, and that together, collectively, we are all the people of God, and we ought to give place to one another. That's what it means to be hospitable. It's not really about serving the perfect hors d'oeuvre or knowing exactly what kind of wine to serve with what kind of meat. It all has to do with how you put others before yourself. There's this reading from Proverbs that says, "Do not exalt yourself, do not claim a place." In the first reading today in Hebrews, the writer encouraged them to keep on loving each other as brothers and sisters. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by doing so, people have entertained angels without knowing it. I really thought about that a lot, and I thought to myself, there have been angels that have knocked on my door at various parsonages where I've lived, and somebody would just say, "Would you mind letting me put my tent in your backyard at the church?" Well, sure, they were riding a bike, and they just would put up a tent anywhere they could. I even offered him if you wanted to come in and take a shower and all that, and he said, "No, I'm good." I said, "Well, what do you do at night?" "No TV, nothing like that." He says, "I love to read." And he says, "If you have a church library, I'd love to go through it and preview it to see if there's anything that maybe I could have." I always say a book is a good friend. Well, that's kind of where we are. Jesus, in this gospel reading, talks about being at a wedding. He loves being at weddings. But he warned them that you shouldn't immediately claim the most highest place of honor at such a gathering, because you'd better be prepared to experience some embarrassment when a more honored guest arrives and is ushered to your seat, because then you have to get up and grab your water and go down the line to a lower spot. That's really embarrassing. I don't know about you, but Jesus is, of course, kind of pulling people's leg a little bit. But he concludes to say, not that if you want to gain favor or if you want to have a high ranking in your community. No, Jesus says, if you want to be truly hospitable, then you give a luncheon or dinner, you ought to not invite your same old friends all the time, but rather you should invite people who could never repay you, like the poor and the crippled and the lame and the blind. You see, Jesus is building a case here for the truth that there are no throwaways in life when it comes to human beings, that everybody is a child of God and they are all worthy of your attention and greeting. There is no one who doesn't deserve our hospitality, and there is no one who should, that Jesus suggests, you can't take a real chance on if you slight certain people. You see, they just might turn out to be angels you didn't know about. You know, on the surface, this is just a great story about good social manners, right, at a wedding. But there's a deeper purpose that Jesus wants to remind us of, that in the family of God, about knowing and understanding that we are all to be genuinely hospitable to one another. In the background looms that even brighter message about God's hospitality, which God showed to us in the ministry of God's own blessed Son, Jesus Christ. We all need to have hospitable manners. So what does it mean to then have a ministry of hospitality? Well, look at that word, hospitality. Before we look at its literal meaning, we need to point out that there's a difference between hospitality and entertaining, right? A psychologist puts it this way: hospitality can't be compared to entertaining, because entertaining says, come to my house, admire my possessions, see the beautiful way that I've laid the table, enjoy the scrumptious, extraordinary food that has taken me all week to prepare. See how perfectly neat and tidy and clean my house is. Come, listen, be at my house to view my thoughts and my views. Entertaining is hard, we know, stressful, because though it may perpetuate the myth that we are perfect, it actually puts up a facade that says we manage to try and live perfect lives, and that our children are perfectly disciplined and obedient. I don't know about you, but I don't think my children were ever perfectly obedient. But hospitality is different. We do not seek to portray a perfect image when it comes to hospitality. People can love us in our weakness, relax with us, and enjoy our company. I always laughed because there was such a difference between our day lady women's circles and our night ladies women's circles. Our day ladies, which were usually our older church members, always loved to have everybody come to their house. They loved to spread a table. They loved to put out their good china, and their houses were immaculate. And I thought to myself, please don't let them ever ask to come to my house. But the night ladies, we laughed. They were the ones that were still working. Their kids were usually a little bit more grown up. But they never said, let's come to my house. They always said, let's go somewhere, so we don't have to go home and clean our houses and impress anybody. We just were there to be with one another. And I always loved that. Hospitality emerges when we realize that this word comes from two very similar sounding other words, hospice and hospital. It emerges when we understand that the word hospice means shelter, and the word hospital, of course, means a place of healing. That was what the night ladies needed. All the stress of the world, they just needed a place where they could share their struggles with other women who understood. In the light of this, then maybe we can examine some of our own words and actions towards other people. Do my words and my actions provide a shelter for other people when they are around me? Do my words and deeds promote a sense of healing for other people when they are around me? How hospitable am I really? I guess I keep thinking about this because of the gentleman that came to our worship a few weeks ago. He clearly was not from our town, and he clearly did not speak English. My guess is he spoke Spanish. And I know some of you went back and welcomed him as best as you could, finding out quickly that we didn't speak the same language. But the man had a phone, and I have noticed this a lot with immigrants, is that they tend to use translators. And the man asked, is it okay for me to worship here? Am I safe? And I thought to myself, I've never walked in somewhere and asked, can I be here? Am I safe to be here? That, to me, is about hospitality. From that moment, we push the word hospice to its limits. We are aware today that the word hospice is used, of course, to that kind of space meant for caring for people who are dying. People who have terminal illnesses receive hospice care. And I guess in the church, we need to remember that there are people in our church that are dying. Not maybe physically, but there are definitely people in our community who might be dying on the inside. For whatever reason, life is really treating them harshly, and they feel so broken. Some are dying just to know someone, to talk to someone, that they have a few, if any, friends. My big brother, Keith, who is very retired now, but his wife Carla is not. She's at a school and she teaches. And we were talking on the text back and forth, and he finally just said, "Would you call me?" And one of the things that my big brother said to me is, now that Carla is back at school, I'm home here all by myself, and it gets kind of lonely. I felt bad, and I thought to myself, I need to call my brother more. But that's the whole point. Some people are dying to feel connected. They don't like feeling like they belong to the human race anymore. They don't feel like maybe they have a purpose, and they're just dying to be affirmed. They are weary from feeling that they amount to nothing. I think that's what we would also say about our friends who are in nursing home care and don't get out very much, or those at home. We all at some time need hospice care. They need the hospitality of the church, because inwardly they are dying. They need a place of shelter, no matter how fleeting, and where they can catch another breath of air to sustain them lest they die. There was another minister, let me tell you that story, who had a favorite slogan that he often repeated in his sermons. He said that the church is not like a country club, it should be more like a hospital. And that's what Jesus was kind of saying here when he gave this new direction of where to sit at the table at a party. That's what Jesus was saying. He said, don't invite your friends or your rich neighbors or anybody else that you pretty much associate all the time. Invite the people that you don't know, the ones that are poor and lame, who are maybe blind, who maybe don't have enough money or even feel embarrassed because they don't feel like they have good enough clothes to come to church. You and I are not in the church to impress one another or to win power struggles. We are here because we are to minister to one another in our weaknesses. We are here to reach out the hand of God to those around us who need some hospitality. You know, now nobody can tell you what your gift should be, but I definitely think that one of the gifts this church has is you are very friendly. When somebody new comes in, you make them feel at home. You're warm, you greet them, and you try and help them to just know where things are and how our service moves along. Maybe you have that gift of gab, the ability to talk at ease with just about anyone you meet. Maybe you could be a greeter. We always are looking for more, aren't we, Julie? And you don't have to be a deacon, but if you can stand at the back of our church and greet people warmly and hand out a bulletin and just chit-chat, you could have the gift of hospitality. You could just be that little spark of light to many long-term members of our church whom no one else seems to talk to or speak to, or we know that there is a ministry of shut-ins and are folks that have lost purposes. But I think one of our most amazing gifts of hospitality that our church currently possesses is that we are open and affirming. Just by merely showing our community of Geneseo that there is a pride flag outside of our church or some Adirondack chairs that are painted in the colors of the rainbow, show a whole population of folks in Geneseo that you are welcome here. I think that hospitality shown to one another in our church hallways and in our sanctuary needs to blossom even deeper. We need to work really hard at reminding ourselves that everybody is a child of God and they are welcome here. Another way of saying that Christian hospitality maybe ultimately is evangelism, kind of in different clothing. And wouldn't that be awesome to know that the reason you spoke kind to somebody during the week, that they end up being with us on Sunday morning? How could we provide more of a sheltering spirit, a hospice place, and speak more about healing than we tell them about what Jesus did for us when he died on the cross? And it wasn't just for some, and it wasn't for just those that were brought up in the church, but it was for everybody, all of God's people. I hope that today we think a little bit more about hospitality. And I love that old hymn that reminds us by saying, if you cannot speak like angels and if you cannot preach like Paul, you can tell of the love of Jesus. You can say he died for all. I am very continually amazed at how this church blesses our ministry of hospitality, and I hope you will keep sharing it too. Amen. Amen. Amen.